Chapter 47, Amateur Theatrics. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. As You Like It, Act 2, Scene 7. Actors, soups, walkers, scene shifters, take your positions, mind your cues. The curtain's up, highly critical and appreciative audience. Play opens. How to get out of jail. Act first, scene first, ordered Tommy Topsail as we stalked into the hall, the mighty Scamp leading the van. 4 turnkeys in their chairs were snoring in concert. We passed through the corridor, receiving the silent salutations of the guards. By Tommy's instructions, I imitated the voice and swagger of his lordship. We reached the great entrance hall, which was brightly lighted, and here the serio-comedy began. It was filled with prison guards and officers, many of whom were acquainted with his lordship. They were discussing the events of the day, the death of the king, prospect of a new cabinet, the assault of the prisoner on the prince and turnkeys, and it was generally conceded that the terrestrial barbarian was the most terrible specimen of a miscellaneous fighter ever seen or heard of. As we neared the throng, my brave little companion showed herself equal to the role she had assumed, and sustained it with immense éclat. She threw herself into her sailor boy swagger, shaking her hands with them all around. "Hello there, you cops, how are ye? Split my tops, but you're a solemn-looking crew. Been to a funeral? Afore I been to a jailbird cop, I be a bird. However, every man to his trade, as the hangman says. Some folks have to be pulled into this world and pulled out, and somebody has to do the job for 'em. One trade's as good as another. I'm a sailor boy. Tommy Topsail's my name, and a tippy-top middy in the bargain. Nevy to Lord Chummyvant here. Uncle Chummy, I calls him for short. Tired of horse tack and sea biscuits aboard ship. The old cap blast his eyes. Wouldn't give me a furlough, so I kicked up a row, knocked the boatswains into that cocked hat, smashed the coxswain's headlights, pitched the cook down the hole, stuffed the cabin boy in the stovepipe, jumped overboard, swam 10 miles, and here I am. Have took Uncle Chummy under my wing, been around your corporation boarding house here, seen all the chaps you're going to string up to the yard arm. We're on first-class lark, don't you see? Bound to paint this town red as a boiled lobster afore morning. Blast me eyes if we aren't." Then, putting his arms akimbo, he dashed off into a tip-top sailor's hornpipe, singing at the top of his voice. "I'm here, I'm there, a jolly dog. My land to see, I'm all agog. To kiss the girls wherever I can, or fight the foreign midshipman. When I'm ashore, I'll heave the log, to sing then to dance or drink the grog, to kiss or fight wherever I can, for I'm a jovial midshipman. A frisky, airy midshipman, I'll sing or dance or tip the can. I'll kiss the girls wherever I can, for I'm a jovial midshipman." The song was received with immense applause. Tommy then dashed off in such a whirlwind of canesque pirouettes, leaps, mid-wheel involutions, and acrobatic evolutions as would have made the whole corps de ballet of the French Théâtre Comique expire with envy and despair. Officers and guards shook their sides with roars of laughter. We leisurely sauntered towards the great doors of the prison. Suddenly, 3 enormous and ferocious dogs, bigger than any Russian bear-hounds or Great Danes I ever saw, barred our exit. Their keen scent had detected the smell of my cast-off prison dress and uniform. One of them had often accompanied the jailer on his visits to my cell, recognized me at once, and manifested his decided disapproval of the role I was playing. He drew his cropped ears back, showed his ugly fangs, and uttered angry growls, while his companions snuffled and snorted around my legs like bloodhounds of the old slave-hunting days. "Blast these infernal brutes!" exclaimed Tommy. "Hello here! Scamp! Rats! Rats! Rats!" Scamp took his cue, and the way he marched into the ratting business was a terror. It was not rodents he was after, but canines. "Yoop! Yoop! Yoop!" was the battle cry. He jumped up and skipped and danced and whirled forward, backward, sideways, and all the other ways, yelling and snarling like a genuine little hellhound. His physiognomy corkscrewed up into a diabolical conglomeration of teeth, eyes, ears, and wrinkles, as would have frightened Beelzebub himself. He bit, snapped, and nipped the tails, noses, and toes of the astounded brutes. At such a terrible rate, they turned tail and beat a hasty retreat amidst roars of laughter from the guards, and we passed on, the mighty scamp receiving the enthusiastic cheers of the crowd. The officers, with obsequies obedient, opened the great prison doors, and Hardigoth met us at the threshold. "My dear Lord Chumpyvant," queried he in a tone of deep commiseration, "pray inform me, what is the spiritual condition of our unfortunate prisoner?" "My dear Hardigoth," I replied, "he appears to be in a highly resigned state of mind, indeed quite cheerful, and anxious to take his final departure to the other scenes than these." "I'm truly delighted to hear it," Hardigoth replied, bowing very low, looking very solemn, and winking slyly at me with his left eye. I returned the salutation with due solemnity, and Tommy winked at him with his right eye. Hardigoth entered, and the doors were shut. We swiftly passed the portico, descended the granite steps, and paused on the green sward. Behind us towered the massive prison walls. The night breeze rustled amidst the trees, and glittering stars shone bright. Elphine blew a low whistle, and a man stepped out from the foliage. "Captain Navioff?" said she. A stout-built and honest-looking old Pluto Martian officer, clad in uniform, came forward. "Your ladyship's chariot is awaiting," said he. We passed through the trees to an open yard, where the chariot was in readiness with its crew. Elphine took Scamp in her arms, and we ascended to the deck, wrapped ourselves in our cloaks, and took seats upon the divan. "Home," she said, "and quickly." The chariot rose above the trees, flew swiftly over the city to his lordship's chateau several miles distant, and descended to the grounds in a grove. We dismounted and entered a pretty little pavilion embowdered with flowers, and near which a fountain was playing. "Captain," she said, "get the airship in readiness immediately. His lordship is on an important mission to the capital of Mandal Ultima." "How long will it take to reach there?" I asked, with my cloak muffled around my face and imitating the voice of Lord Chumpyvant. "It's 1,500 miles distance, your lordship. If the wind is fair, we can reach it by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning," replied the captain. The clock from the tower of the chateau now chimed the midnight hour. "Spare no speed," said I. "I have an audience with Duke Althithon in relation to the prisoner. In my humble opinion, your lordship, he has been very unfairly treated." "Yes, but it will surprise many to know that he is out." "Is it possible? I'm glad to hear that Prince de Viageor's heart is opened at last." "As to his heart I cannot vouch, but as to his prison doors I can." "Yep, yep, yep," resounded from Elphine's coat, corroborating my statement, and as the captain left to get the ship ready, the scamp stuck his beautiful head out and winked one eye at me. "Oh, you sweet, precious, lovely darling," exclaimed Elphine, gushingly kissing the dear little ferrety eyes and dear little cold nose. I frankly confess this was the first time in my life that I had ever looked with any complacency upon the feminine caresses so often bestowed upon these pets, but I was compelled to admit that this canine specimen had honestly earned the meat of praise, and was certainly the greatest of all scamps. The glittering domes and turrets of the chateau shone under the bright moonlight. "Yonder is my happy home," said Elphine. "I have arranged all the rooms so prettily. I wish you could see them. My lordship is good and kind to me. My household are honest and faithful. They all love me, and we are so happy there. And now I must leave them all, perhaps forever, for I can never return here again." And she burst into tears. "Rest assured, my dear lady," I replied, "that in the kingdom where we go, you and your husband will meet warm friends, and you shall have a new and beautiful home." A pretty snow-white pigeon fluttered down from the trees, and softly cooing, lit on her shoulder. "'Tis my dear Columba," she murmured, holding it to her bosom, then plucking a few flowers. "They are the only mementos I can take with me." Captain Novikov now came forward. "The ship is in readiness," said he. Elphine, wafting a kiss to the glittering towers of the chateau, and in deep tones of sadness, "Dear, dear home, where I have passed so many happy hours, farewell, I shall never see thee more." We hurried from the pavilion and mounted the ship. The crew were at their posts. The signal was given, and she rose in graceful circles to an immense height in the air. We descended to the cabin. Captain Novikov took his bearings. The ship unfurled her mighty wings and flew to the north with the speed of a whirlwind. Out of the tiger's den at last! You are free, thank God!" murmured Elphine. With a faint sigh, she sank upon the divan. Her nerves had given way under the terrible strain, and as her beautiful face was upturned to mine, her dark fringed lashes shading her pale cheek, the curls of rich glossy hair flowing down her neck, 'twas with the feeling of deepest gratitude that I pressed my lips to the brow of that brave little lady, who had sacrificed her home and risked her life for me.